Sushma, and today I'm going to interview Orly Kelly. And Orly, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who you are, how you cook, where do you come from, etc.
Well, I was born in San Francisco 89 years ago.
Wow.
And I went all through public schools. First Grant School, which is no longer there, was a lovely little school up on Broadway and Pacific and Broderick Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Lowell High School and graduated from Lowell. And then I went to University of California, Berkeley, and graduated from Cal. So as someone once said to me on the East Coast, "Oh, so all your education was public." But we had a very good public education here in California in those days, and I hope it still is. I've always been interested in gathering recipes. I was thinking about it that my first recipe I gathered when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I still have the little index card on which I wrote the recipe. I had spent, Mrs. Rubin had served us this delicious strawberry jam, and the only jam I ever had at home was blackberry jam, because my mother would pick blackberries at Russian River during the summer and make blackberry jam, and we just never seemed to have strawberry jam at home because I don't know, she didn't buy jam, you know. If you made it, you ate it, but that was about it. And but this was so delicious that I remember Mrs. Rubin gave me a little index card and said, "Here, you can copy the recipe." And I also got a recipe for orange marmalade from her.
Oh my!
And it was called 111 marmalade, and it had 1 grapefruit, 1 orange, and 1 lemon. And you made little strips of all the, well, you know, the way you do for marmalade. And I still make that recipe. Well, I don't anymore because I'm now on the keto diet, but I've made it for years. But it is a kick to see those cards.
Wow.
That I had written so long ago in my recipe book. I was thinking about, too, when years after I graduated from Cal, I went and spent 3 years in Europe, in Paris. And before we got our jobs, I went over with a friend of mine from Cal, Julie Rumsey. And before we got our jobs, we had gone down to Italy. And I had a former beau who was then living in Florence.
Oh, wow.
And,
so what year was this?
Well, it would have been 1951.
Good Lord.
And so we were staying at a little pensione, and every couple of nights they made this delicious pudding that they would serve us. And I would ask for the recipe, and he would say no, he wouldn't give it to me.
It was top secret.
But because we stayed for 3 weeks, on our last night, he gave me the recipe. And when I looked at it, the first item on the list of ingredients said, "Take 2 sheets of fish glue," which was the gelatin, I figured.
Oh my goodness.
And so, of course, I translated that into Knox gelatin when I got home, but it's still a fantastic recipe.
And what is it again?
Well, it's a Bavarian cream.
Bavarian cream.
Yes,
wow.
but I call it my Italian Bavarian cream since I got it from Italy. But it's I've liked to cook all my life, but just for for myself and my guests, and I did love to entertain much of my life too.
So one of the things you have said to all of us at the Health and Nutrition Club is you've always cooked from scratch.
Yes.
And you're now 89 years old and in pretty darn good health.
Well, I'll be 90 in July.
90 in July.
Yeah.
So do you still cook everything from scratch?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
I really do. And It's not that hard. It really isn't. It takes a little longer, but because you have to wash the vegetables and trim the vegetables. But I save all my trims from everything, whether it's carrot tops or the stems of kale or anything that you can't really eat. And those go into, they get washed, and I keep them in a plastic bag. And once a week I make broth from all my trimmings.
So like a vegetable broth?
Yes. Well, if I have chicken bones, as I eat chicken, I'll throw the bones into the freezer in a plastic bag. And and also, for instance, when I'm chopping onions, before I do that, I'll rinse off the onion to get the dust off. But all that outside of the onion, I save and put it into the soup because, first of all, it deepens the color of your soup, but it gives it a nice extra flavor as well. And I think I learned some of that from Josephine Araldo, who was a wonderful chef whom I met in the 70s.
I see.
She was one of the first women to graduate from Cordon Bleu. And I think she was Henri Paul Pellepras' favorite pupil. I've read that somewhere.
I see.
And she was a feisty little French woman who she told us that every day she would take everything out of the refrigerator and put it on the counter and see what she needed to add to that for today's meals. And of course the French do tend to go out to their market every day, unlike us. We have refrigeration and we go once a week and maybe supplement a little bit, but we don't do it the way they did. But that's what she did, and she worked afterwards for Isadora Duncan for a while.
Goodness.
And,
the actress.
The dancer.
The dancer.
She was a dancer. Yeah, and she worked for as chef for some of the prominent families in San Francisco. And I met her in the mid-'70s when I went into publishing, and a friend of mine had started Strawberry Hill Press, and he asked me if I would take a look at a book that he was publishing, which was called Cooking with Josephine.
I see.
And it was really about ready to go to press, and I looked at it and I said, Jean-Louis, this has a lot of work that needs to be done because none of the ingredients were listed in the order in which you use them.
I see.
And that's really important in a recipe.
I see.
And I also would check the recipe, and sometimes a major ingredient had just been left out. So we had to do quite a little bit of work. But I looked on the internet recently, and her books are still in print.
Oh my!
They're now published, I think, by Dial Press. So they must have bought the rights to her books. But she was a wonderful person to meet and be inspired by.
Yes.
She was very frugal.
I see.
So frugality in cooking is not hard to do. Instead of just tossing everything, you use it in one way or another.
So that's the other question I had. A lot of people feel that organic is expensive. Could you talk a little bit about frugality in organic cooking and how the average Joe can afford to buy decent quality foods?
Well, for a long time I did not do organic unless it were on sale because I found it was too expensive. But my daughter bought everything organic. She was adamant about it, and she said, "Mom, do it. You know, spend it." The trouble is, when you're a depression baby, you tend to be very, very careful sometimes. And so I finally decided, well, she's right. And so now I don't drive anymore, so she drives me. We go together every Saturday morning to Good Earth Market, and just about everything that they sell is organic, and they have wonderful sales as well. So I've just gotten used to it, and I no longer buy the non-organic. And then what you find is you buy with an eye toward not ending up at the end of the week throwing half of what you bought away.
Right. So you're frugal in how you purchase it, and you use all the extraneous parts.
Yes, right. And I feel it's much healthier. And I'm pretty strong for my age.
Yeah, you are. I gotta say, you walk faster than most people my age. I am 58 and you're 90, and you keep up a very, very good pace and very, very good health.
Well, and I'm living on probably only half of my organs. It seems that
tell us about your organs. Yes.
Doctors along the way have seen fit to remove so many of my organs that my kids for a while were calling me Orlyectomy. But anyway, since I went on the ketogenic diet, I've really been feeling very well. And,
tell me why you went on the ketogenic diet.
Well, one of the things that I lost a couple of years ago was my gallbladder. And although they had said, it's nothing, you just have to eat a little more carefully afterwards, I never felt the same after losing my gallbladder. I had terrible dizziness and terrible nausea. The nausea was just unbelievable and very, very difficult to live with. And so finally, when I started the health and nutrition class or group that Sushma Gakhel holds every other week at the College of Marin, I thought I would try the ketogenic diet, which she recommended. And within a reasonably short period of time, I was over my nausea. And my doctor had given me nausea pills, and I've always been rather wary of fixing to the reason why I have a certain feeling, and then if it's something I need to get over, then find out why and do that in a natural way. And Sushma has helped me with that a lot.
So your nausea has completely gone away?
The nausea has really gone away.
Okay.
Yeah. Lately I've had some problems with my back, and I have to deal with dizziness and vertigo. So I no longer drive because I'm responsible enough to think that's not a good idea, and that's hard. That's really hard to give up when you've been an independent person.
And then you're also intermittent fasting. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I usually have my first meal around 12:30 or 1, and I am usually finished eating by around 7 at night, and sometimes 7:30, and then I just don't eat till the next day at 12:30 again.
And was it easy to do?
For me, it was not difficult because I have not. I often would skip breakfast or eat a very small breakfast, and for me, it really wasn't difficult. I think sometimes if I'm really hungry, Sushma said, "Well, just eat a little butter," and of course it's pastured, green, grass-fed cows that produce the butter. But I'll just take a pat or two of butter, and that holds me over very nicely. It's amazing. It's also amazing how you can eat all of these fats, which the government, with its pyramid, tells you are so terrible for your arteries and your heart. And all of a sudden now I'm eating animal fats and butter and coconut
don't have
oil.
clogged arteries.
And no, in fact, I recently had a blood test, and it showed that my cholesterol levels were really very good, and my blood sugars were fine, and so. You really often have to research some of this yourself because the people in the know in the government or in the Department of Food or whatever it is seem to be about 10 or 20 years behind time.
Yes, for sure. Well, you look fantastic.
Well, thank you.
You are close to almost 90 years old.
Yes.
You walk like a 30-year-old, and Orly and I went to the farmers market today, and that's where we are filming this. We're gonna do more films of Orly as time goes by, because she's a fantastic cook. She makes her own sautés and foods, and has some wonderful ideas on how you can cook and think about cooking, because I think a whole generation of us has gotten to the point where we are afraid of cooking. So if you could allay the younger folks' fears on cooking with one last sort of piece of advice, tell me what it would be.
Well, don't be afraid to fail. I think whenever we cook, we're worried that it's not going to taste good, but somehow things that you cook yourself are really good. You've put the ingredients in that you like, first of all, and if you don't burn it or have some other disaster, it's probably going to be really good, and it gives you a certain amount of pride and pleasure when anyone to whom you've served it raves about it. I mean, sure. It's really good for your ego. So I would say give it a try.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.